Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup for all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here, and here is
Becky.
Oh, we have an action-packed and great show for you today.
We do indeed. First up, we have Nikon Summer savings have started in Europe. That includes us over here in the UK. From the 27th of May until the 18th of July, you can save up to £270 on some Nikon goodies.
That's pretty good, isn't it? So they have, for example, Z7 II with 24-70 kit, which has £360 off. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's actually the highest one. And then other kits, for example, the Z6 II with 24-70 or the Z5 with the 24-200 or 24-70, those are all £270 off. Then we've got a lot of Z lenses. So all the primes, basically.
What's your pigbacks?
I am very excited by this £180 off the 51.2S. I think that's a nice little saving, but it's £90 off all the other primes. And then the only one that's not in there, understandably because of stock situation, is the 105 macro.
Yeah, and since summer is coming up, Z24-200 is at £180 off, so it's $769 instead of $949. So good if you're planning any holidays soon.
That's right. And then one that we reviewed quite recently, which is the 28-75 2.8, is down to $859 with £90 off.
I thought you meant Z800mm 6.3, and I was like, it's already on sale?
No, not that one. Now we've also got some DSLR lenses. So for those of you who are running DSLRs, we've got the 500PF, 300PF, the 14-24 and the 24-70, which all have discounts on them as well.
So if you're still DSLR user and haven't bought 500mm yet, then it's at a good discount right now.
Yes.
Now let's move on to shipping updates. In USA, we have Z100-400s are coming in. Apparently, Adorama is shipping orders placed at the end of April this year, so that's pretty good. So it basically means that this is May already. Well, when you say it's probably 1st of June, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good lead time. Over in the UK,
4 to 5 weeks, yeah.
4 to 5 weeks, exactly. Over in the UK, we're in the scenario where it's still a couple of months wait, but we are starting to see deliveries come through now. And I think it's going to snowball and we're going to start to see them faster and faster.
In fact, we had a shipment last week.
Yeah, literally right after the podcast came out, we had a delivery. One of the very exciting things is actually the 105 macro. That now, if you place an order, we expect to see the lenses within sort of 1 to 2 weeks of you placing your order. There is no waiting list per se anymore. It's more just once you place your order, you've got a couple of weeks and then you have your lens in your hands. The 100 to 400, we're still fulfilling early orders. We're not quite up to April yet, but we did move the waiting list by another 4 people last week.
Yeah, what we generally see, the longer people wait, then the more quantity starts to come in at the same time. So once they, I guess, decide to ship to Europe, then suddenly we get a good quantity of them coming in.
Yeah, it's either that or once the manufacturing process, I don't know, prioritizes those things. Who knows?
I think they have like 3 exits on the like production line. It's like USA, Europe, Asia, you know. So, and there's like USA, oh, Europe, you know, and then Asia.
Someone's standing at the Europe one saying, we don't like England.
Yeah, I sincerely want to bribe that person who decides the allocation stock with a nice falafel.
It's a good idea. Maybe that will make all the difference.
Exactly. Falafel in the envelope.
That's right. And then in come the Z9s.
Yeah, it might be a bit soggy and oily, but that's fine.
A little bit.
All right, let's move on to firmware updates. We've seen a firmware update of Z70 2.8S lens. It's been updated to version 1.21. What did they fix, Becky?
They fixed the following issues. The focus distance displayed in the lens info panel immediately after the camera was turned on would sometimes not change if the zoom ring was rotated while the camera was off. In rare cases, this would cause autofocus to stop. It's a very odd and specific issue, but could be problematic. They also fixed that when an option other than non-linear was selected for custom setting F9, which is focus ring rotation range, a beep would sound to signal that a stored focus position had been recalled, despite the focusing ring having been rotated to end memory recall before completion of the recall operation. That's all we need to know, really.
Absolutely. Whoever writes those changes that being published on their website shouldn't work in the PR firm because they can't do press releases.
I think that they need Grammarly.
Or just Google Translate. No, actually, Google Translate is what they use right now.
That's it.
Anyways.
Next up, Nikon Tech Support updated the approximate movie recording times for the Z9. They've added new memory cards and version 2.0 firmware update.
Yeah, so we've seen obviously a lot of memory cards popping up. There's new Dalkin Black, there's a bunch of other manufacturers as well. ProGrade released new memory cards, which are really fast. And then Firmware 2 came out about a month ago. So I guess that's all changed or extended recording time. So if you want to have a look at that, that's definitely quite an extensive list. Now, thank you very much for joining us today. That was a great, good version of the podcast. Now we move on to the things that none of us understand, but we will try to make sense of them.
We will try.
So on May 26, 2022, Nikon held an investor relation days in Japan where they had presenters from president of Nikon, etc., etc. And we now got the presentation materials that Nikon used to report to the investors on this day. So let's just, yeah, absolutely. It's good to be an investor and get all the documentations, So anyway, so they've released our materials. It's full of PR stuff, but let's just try to get through that. So we're going to focus our analysis on Nikon Imaging Division, and this is midterm plan ending in 2025. So we're going to see what Nikon will do with their cameras and lenses in 2025.
Yeah, so their vision is to expand possibilities for visual expression and acquire overwhelming support from all generations of fans around the world. They obviously focus on digital cameras, interchangeable lenses, binocular telescopes, image contents, and automatic image capture. Those are their products. Aside from precision equipment, which is the largest area of revenue and operating profit, imaging products comes in second place. That's the mustard color in your pie chart. But what about their forecasted and expected revenue, Con? Tell us about financials.
Right. By 2025, they are expected to have pretty much the same revenue as they're expecting to have next year. So it's 210 billion. In 2023, it's going to be about 200 billion in 2026. So 10 billion less, but with a profit margin being up from 10% to 11%. Okay, you sell less, but your margin is higher, so that's pretty good, isn't it? Now, looking at the main product they sell in the imaging division, it's mainly going to be Z cameras and lenses with a significant reduction of DSLRs. So we're going to come back to that right at the end of it. So, but that's the gist of it. Now, in terms of sales of digital camera interchangeable lenses units, so effectively all cameras with changeable lenses, they expected the market to increase from 2.7 million units to 3 million units by 2025 and basically stay there. They're effectively saying that people now looking to buy a better camera than their phone. So therefore, we're going to see a slight increase. It's not going to be a huge increase, but it's going to be comfortable 3 mil from about 2024 to up to 2026.
So in terms of what that means for their business strategy, step number 1 is bolstering the Z mount system by expanding the lens lineup. This is 50 plus lenses and a 2 plus lens tie ratio, which basically means that you'd buy 2 lenses for every camera.
Yeah, which makes sense if you're buying a new system. So if a lot of people switching from DSLR to Z, they actually will probably buy at least 1 lens to start with, and they will add a second one as soon as possible, or may buy a couple of lenses straight away. Especially pro switching, they definitely buy, let's say, a camera and maybe 3 lens setup straight away to do that. So we're going to definitely see increase on that. In terms of their strategy as well, they want to focus on mid to high-end models for pro and hobbyists, with expected average selling price also increasing by 20%. So effectively, it's a high-value, high-margin products with additional inflation added in. The prices are going to go up, but they're going to sell more.
Yes. Now, they did point out the very important fact that the number of users on Instagram has nearly doubled over the past 6 years.
Exactly. And I do want to share my images from Nikon Z9 in 1080p pixel image limit on Instagram, clearly.
Now, consumers in their 20s or younger are increasingly motivated to purchase digital cameras with interchangeable lenses for better pictures than a smartphone and also for use on social media.
Exactly. That's why I want Z8 to have 100 megapixels, because I want to use my pictures on social media.
Because gone are the days when you invite your neighbors round and you get the slides out and you project them onto your wall in your living room. You now actually just show thousands of people through the medium of your telephone.
Gone are the dates where the photo album or photo frame would be the best birthday present ever.
Yeah, sad.
Said news.
Now, they also want to appeal to video creators. So according to Nikon, the number of users motivated by video shooting has more than tripled over the past 6 years.
Makes sense.
Yep, and their strategy is to strengthen products and services responding to young hobbyists and video needs.
Yeah, what's interesting is they already see adoption of Nikon Z9 in production side and broadcast station settings as video cameras that support professional workflows. So effectively, they're starting to see those cameras, like Z9, being used for these applications by pros.
Yeah. Now, they are also actively working with specialized accessory makers to support video shooting ecosystem.
Yeah, so we're talking about video rigs effectively. We're talking about stabilizers, mics, etc., etc. So what they say is like they're trying to align them so they in talk to them before releasing the camera as well. So they share the specs, etc.
That's right. They will also be deploying advanced features from the Z9 across the lineup.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yes.
Yeah, trickling down technology from the top most expensive offering to cheaper, and cheaper. A lot of companies do this. Fujifilm is well known for this, Nikon as well. So when we're talking about those things, I think Z8 makes sense to be in the first camera being released there because you can charge, well, less than Z9, still more than, let's say, Z7 or Z6 cameras. But potentially it could fit a Z90 analogy that we talked about last week, where you do get the highest specs and you do charge premium for the flagship DX crop camera.
Indeed. And then we also will probably be due a Z6 III and Z7 III if they're going to go down that route at some point. So it would be interesting to see what they deploy into those as well.
Another interesting thing, which I also don't quite understand, is focus on apps and on the cloud. Okay, if you look at the current apps, so we got SnapBridge, we got NX Field, NX Mobile Air, and also the robot arms.
Yeah, we've got the Mark Roberts motion control software, which they use to control robots remotely.
So part of SnapBridge, those are actually a pro things aimed at pro sports photographers as well as just professional applications. Now looking at the consumer side of things, we have SnapBridge, which is constantly improving. We got Nikon Image Space as well. I guess we're going to see more in this field. I would like them to maybe streamline those things. While SnapBridge is working really, really well compared to, let's say, mobile apps from a couple of years ago, we would want to see even more streamlined applications here. So just, you switch on the app, it's automatically connects to your camera, etc., etc.
Yes. Now, last up, they have said part of the strategy, although I don't totally understand why this is a strategy, but anyway, revenue from DSLR products is expected to be significantly reduced by 2025. This is mainly down to the lack of new products in that range.
Well, no, let me explain you what's happening. What is remarkable already right now, that mirrorless makes up around 51% of the revenue right now from all the sales. So mirrorless already sell more than DSLRs. Okay, and this is expected to rise to 82% by 2025. Okay, so DSLRs comprise just 30% right now, and they projecting it will be lower than 5%.
Okay,
this is the reason why. Now you're right, there's no new products, but if you look at the projections, will it make sense to release a new product in a shrinking market? So what I think is going to happen is they may pull out of the market completely, which I think is not going to happen. But what I think is going to happen by 2025 or year ending in 2026 effectively is we're going to have an F6 situation.
Right.
So where we had the Nikon F6 being sold as the only film camera for about 10 years after all the other SLRs were discontinued. If you look at this, I think they're going to leave the top products, something like D780, D850, available for sale, and everything else will be discontinued.
Right.
They may update them with the latest specs, but without changing that much. So maybe we're going to see new sensors, something like this. But overall, they're not going to change as much in terms of other specifications like autofocus or build quality. But it does sound to me that they're projecting that those sales are going to shrink. We're not going to see new products.
Yeah.
As simple as that. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I was thinking about the S6 and then I was thinking about them discontinuing the D6, right? And what the kind of implications would be to professionals who have very recently bought a D6. And obviously my recommendation to Nikon, not that I work for Nikon, but would be to survey the MPS market on the subject of do we discontinue this or do we just continue to produce them in a very small quantity in order to kind of make the DSLR users feel supported or the pro users feel supported?
Well, I think it makes sense, but then the camera is going to be supported for another 10 years in terms of servicing. That's number one. Number two, why would you buy D6 right now when Z9 is so much better?
I completely agree. So there was a conclusion to that thought process, but it would be interesting to see whether or not Nikon continue to support a full range of DSLRs. I have a feeling that we're going to see the lower end of DSLRs, the DX DSLRs. I think they're going to be phased out fairly quickly. I would love it if they kept an entry point DSLR. D3500 would be useful, but only if it's cost effective for them to do it. There's no point in having those mid-range DSLRs anymore.
Well, it's a good thing and a bad thing. You know, the bad thing, obviously, DSLRs will be no more. Effectively, we may have like the G850 basically being represented, nothing else, maybe G780 or something like this.
Sure.
The good thing is we are seeing now mirrorless technology surpassing technology of DSLRs.
Yeah.
So DSLRs technology been limited for a long time due to a design, optical viewfinder, etc., moving parts inside. So we now start to see where mirrorless actually has clear advantages in terms of use.
Yeah.
So in terms of this, if you can't reinvent DSLRs anymore, if you can't put so much R&D in the two different systems, Nikon, by the way, increased R&D expenses this year, so which is a good thing because they think that this 9 is doing well. Let's try to make this cheaper for for the other models. But does it make sense to get the share of some of that R&D into DSLRs? I don't think it makes sense from financial point of view because you're going to sell less and less and less every year. Maybe not the same projections, but it's definitely going to shrink.
Yes, agreed. I think that our dedicated DSLR users would probably be inclined to try and suggest or recommend to Nikon that they continue to support DSLRs for as long as possible. And I'm with you on that entirely. There's definitely still a demand for them, but perhaps not newer models per se, just continued support of the older models as we've kind of reached a peak of where DSLRs can get to now.
Absolutely. If you want DSLRs still being produced, write to your local MP. All right. In terms of other revenues in imaging division, there's also, if you look at the chart here, so we're going to see about 20% or something like this. So it looks like that it is to do with imaging content and services. So Nikon is banking on mixed reality and also 3D and 360 image capture. Remember we talked about that they partnered with Microsoft back in the day to create virtual reality, mixed reality applications, etc. Obviously, we now have Metaverse by Facebook/Meta. So I guess they're trying to bank on that being the next big thing. Obviously, lots of companies now thinking what is the next big thing. So it may pay off, it may not. Those things are obviously arguable, but that's what they're thinking about. And also we have astronomy income where Nikon has a partnership with Unistellar where they supply glass for the telescopes.
Nice. I'm just waiting for Nikon to open up their NFT division.
I guess that monkey with a Nikon camera is going to fetch billions.
Yes. I'd buy one of those.
Yes.
I mean, it'd be one of a kind. That's the whole point, right?
All right. For the full report, we put the links in the description below. We also put some commentaries from Tom Hogan, Petapixels, Nikon Rooms as well. So if you want to do your own research, do have a look in there. And now let's move on to Z90 versus R7 discussion that we had last week. So a lot more videos and hands-on reviews came out last week. So from looking at them, couple of things emerged. So in my opinion, R7 is not a D500 camera. So a couple of things that limits it. It's autofocus performance, albeit being from R3 camera, which is their flagship at the moment, which is below Z9. It's actually doesn't perform the same because of non-back illuminated sensor. So it is slower while still technically being the same thing. Now, when we talked about D90 or imaginary Z90 that Nikon may announce or not, I think it will be more expensive if it has the following factors. So first of all, illuminated sensor.
Needs a BSI, yeah.
Yeah, BSI and high res, etc., etc. Then obviously we need all the Z90 goodies, but not just Z90 goodies, but also that going to perform on par. So I don't want to have a GIMP camera. I wanted literally to have a Z9 little brother. So effectively, what we're going to have is the same processor.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very, very fast, can process lots of data. Autofocus performance, basically the same. High refresh rate on the camera and nice and big, just the same performance on Z9. Bigger buffer. Again, R7 has a very limited buffer. It's good for very small bursts. It's not Z9 buffer. So I would want to have something like this. And obviously, yeah, it's something like build quality. R7 doesn't seem to be fully professional. It's more of a semi-professional. And then it also doesn't have 4K at 220 frames per second, which Z9 has. So if you get all these things from Z9, Z90 will be a small brother of Z9, and it's also will be more expensive. It's not going to be $14.99 as the price of R7. I personally think that we're looking at 2.5, maybe 2 if they're aggressive, but I think 2.5, that's the right price point. If you literally get a DX brother, which does pretty much identical or 99.9% of what Z9 does at $5,500. And it clearly also fits that narrative of high value, high margins products as well. So if we talk that Nikon is pushing full frame back in the day, Z90 being an expensive camera, being high margin, and being a flagship DX body makes sense because, again, this camera is going to be sold to Z9 users looking at the second camera who are going to use full frame lenses, not the variable aperture DX lenses.
Very true. Okay.
Share your thoughts in the comments below.
On to some other news. As was briefly mentioned in our live stream on Friday, Red is actually suing Nikon for allegedly infringing on its video compression technology with the Z9's new NRAW video capture. This is a new lawsuit filed by representatives for the cinema camera manufacturer Red. Actually, similar thing happened to Blackmagic not that long ago, but
Apple,
yeah, it happens. We're not overly worried about it, but basically the lawsuit says that Red is accusing Nikon of knowingly using technology described in Red's patents pertaining to highly compressed video data in a visually lossless manner.
which is quite vague and obscure.
It is. It's a bit like when Ford tried to patent the word car, CAR.
Or Liverpool Football Club tried to patent the word Liverpool.
It's a strange one because obviously Red don't necessarily own that sort of technology of lossless compressed or highly compressed RAW with no loss of image quality. But anyway, I don't actually know how to conclude this
Well, look,
statement.
If you look at this, so Nikon is licensing their T-Core RAW codec from a company called Into Pix. Okay, so surprisingly, Red is not suing Into Pix; they're suing Nikon. I have an interesting comment from Tom Hogan on this one. He says, many of us who've been involved in video technology for decades feel that the Red patents in the US should never have been granted in the first place due to previous vagueness as well as obviousness. Apple felt that way and tried to get the patent thrown out. But the way US courts work with patents is nebulous. As many judges simply don't understand the tech and dependencies, Apple didn't try very hard, it didn't win their case, but obviously found some way to settle with Red. Otherwise, we wouldn't have ProRes RAW, which is also supported on Nikon Z9. So the whole thing about highly compressed video data in visually lossless manner can be applied to any codec.
Yes.
Blackmagic has their B-RAW.
Well, here's the thing. I think that what they actually need to do is take actual videographers and put them in court and just have them talk about it because unfortunately it is a highly technical subject and only those who actually use the technology are going to be able to be the ones who can say whether or not it infringes on any patent. I mean, I don't know how you can patent. It's like saying, oh, I am now going to patent the high resolution sensors and nobody can produce high resolution sensors. And then because it actually produces better image quality than old cameras or old technology. Makes no sense.
That's true.
In my opinion.
What's interesting is that Red is seeking a preliminary and permanent injunction enjoining Nikon from infringing the claims, meaning it wants Nikon to stop promoting and selling the products allegedly infringing upon Red's technology. So effectively, if Z9 has that technology, they want Nikon to stop selling such camera, which I don't think will ever happen.
No.
Now, a couple of outcomes that may happen. If Red wins, we may have Z9 with a new firmware which removes the raw data. Option 2, Nikon settles with Red and pay them money. Option 3, Nikon wins, and that means that the whole patent thing in the United States would have to be relooked at.
Yeah, and I hope that they do fight for it enough that it does throw those patents out the window because it should have been done. I mean, we also have, as an example, Sony went so far as to countersue Red for infringing upon its patent. So if they just threw the patents out the window, then everybody could just get along, live happily ever after, and make the products that they want to make.
Yeah, the interesting video online. There's interesting comments on Nikon Rumors by user RC Jenkins, which goes into the details, the way the codecs work. So do have a look at those. We definitely will follow the suit and we'll update you if there are any developments whatsoever. I don't think that is going to be anything better than Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, but we'll stay with it.
We will. Now for some third-party news. First up, very exciting, we have received the Voigtlander 50mm f2 APO Lanthar lens that is now in stock with us, and it came out on Thursday.
And first impression is very, very good.
We are very excited about this lens. If you would like to buy a copy, then we have them in stock. It is a full frame Z lens, so it goes straight onto your Z camera. It is manual focus. It's beautifully made. Image quality so far looks very impressive.
And we will be reviewing it at some point.
We will be. For those of you who are waiting for the APS-C 23mm version, we're hoping to see that mid-June. So we'll keep you updated when we have news.
And if it is as good as Nocton D35 1.2 lens, which we reviewed a couple months ago, I think it's going to be a good seller for Nikon.
We also have a new APS-C lens for the Nikon Z mount by Nippon Ibilux, which is a 40mm f 0.85 Mark III lens.
All right. So this is the widest aperture lens in the world.
Wow. Impressive. So the Ibilux Mark III lens is the fastest lens in the world, designed for portrait and art photographers. Many special and artistic ideas can be realized with this lens. Users think the unique creamy effect is very romantic and sweet.
Comes with extra cream when you buy it.
Best performance will be achieved in the focal distance of 2.5 meters throughout the aperture of 5.6. That's usually the way. You don't shoot with the lens wide open if you want the very best optical performance. That's the case with any and all lenses. It is an APS-C lens, so it's obviously designed for the likes of the Z50 and the ZFC and the future Z90 that we've now decided is going to be a thing.
And it is a very, very special lens. You know why? Because it's not cheap.
No, it is $1,780 and it weighs over a kilo. It's 1,150 grams, so it's not going to be a small lens either.
So yeah, if you're into that, so definitely have a look at that. It's probably going to be very special. Nippon used to be quite well known for their Canon to Nikon adapters. We used to sell those. They weren't cheap as well, but I assume it's going to be very, very good quality.
We also have a Mica 7.5mm f2.8 DX lens that's been announced for the Nikon Z. This is again an APS-C lens. It's a mirrorless fisheye, and they actually make it for the Sony mount, the Z mount, and a few of the others as well. It has an angle of view of 190 degrees.
Which is pretty wide. And then the price is pretty good as well. It's $149. It's not too bad. So if you want to get a fisheye for your Z camera, that's going to be a good option.
Indeed. So Delkin has issued an update with regards to their new Delkin Black cards. I think there was a few complaints, shall we say, about the wording that they used on the promotion of their new cards. So they have actually said, we're sorry. We're sorry. They've said we're sorry.
And they left.
No, they've actually said Delkin has certainly confused and possibly misled some of our customers with comments we recently made about our new line of black cards. This act was not intentional in any way, and we're sorry to have frustrated some of our customers. We're engineers first, making the best memory products we can, and photographers second. Occasionally, this fact has an ability to impact decisions and directions. Thank you to a great photographer for writing a clearer description of the performance of our new line of cards in the Z9 camera specifically.
Okay, so before you read that, so basically they claimed an unlimited buffer. That's what I remember from their press release, nothing else.
Yeah.
Unlimited buffer. So that is apparently not the case.
Yeah.
So what does he say?
So he says, in real world testing in the Z9 with good light, auto ISO, wide area AF, etc., beyond the initial 79 frames of NEF, raw, lossless compression format at 20 frames per second, the new Delkin Black cards can deliver an average frame rate of up to 15 frames per second for another 20 seconds. So essentially, you've got 20 frames per second up to 79 frames. And then after that, it will be 15 frames per second for another 20 seconds. So not 20 frames per second. So this isn't really an unlimited buffer. So it does slow down the frame rate ever so fractionally.
What interesting, they say that under the same conditions, some of our top competitors struggle to capture 45 frames before dropping to 10 frames per second or less. So it's still better than a lot of top competitors in this space, but it's not an unlimited buffer.
That's right. They do say that under typical conditions, it's actually 200 uninterrupted frames at 20 frames per second with the Delkin Black cards.
And that's with high efficiency star format.
Right. So, yeah. So there's a few variables there.
So we have the card in hands, and I think once I get the time, I'll try to test it and see what we can come up with.
Yes.
Phew. With another technical article over the way, let's move on to things we love. Some film news.
Yay. Woo.
Okay, company Orvo, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which is a manufacturer of cinematography film, mainly black and white. They've launched new black and white film recently, which is available right now, but they also now launching a brand new color negative film, which is called Wolfen NC500.
Yes.
So it will be available on 1st of June and available for pre-order on the website for the shipping from 1st of July. Thank you, Becky. In the launch statement, they say that Wolfen NC500 is limited edition 500 ASA 36 exposure color photograph film. This is the first brand new color photograph film that we have launched in decades, proudly still produced in Bitterfeld Wolfen on the original site, where film manufacturer has been a tradition since 1910.
Yeah, so it's an ISO 500 film and it will be available in rolls of 36 exposures. There are no details on pricing, though there has been a post on Reddit
Clearly
circulating, which is believed to be dealer pricing, quoting an RRP of around €14 a roll, which is about £11.
Yeah. Unfortunately for film, RRP is actually not the highest price. So normally with all the digital stuff, RRP and then everything is actually cost lower than RRP, which is recommended retail price. In this case, it's probably going to be double and sold out everywhere.
Yes. Now, the film is actually based on an Agfa Color Cinema film, which is XT320, used in movies such as Out of Africa, Last of the Mohicans, I fell asleep during that film, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Baby!
Was it? It was
Seal.
Seal.
It was Seal.
No.
It was Seal.
Kiss from a Rose was Batman.
It wasn't Batman as well, but I think it was also in
No,
Robin
I think
Hood.
it was Bryan Adams that was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
You're probably right.
I think it was Bryan Adams, yeah.
Everything
I do, yeah. Because Seal is that Kiss from a Rose is one of my favorite songs of all time, and I knew that it was from Batman Forever. You see, it's a great song.
Okay, so I was just
That's a classic.
Anyway, so it's apparently famous for its greens, desaturated shadows, enhanced grains. So these are all aspects that they were looking into. So they weren't trying to launch a film that replicates current films that are available. They were looking at the film stock that is different, which means it's another flavor to choose from when you're purchasing your colored film, when you can get them in stock.
Exactly. What do we do about, I'm hoping it's going to be a DX film, but is a camera going to be able to read?
There's going to be full frame film back.
But that ISO 500 is a bit of an unusual one.
Oh, it's fine for most cameras.
You can just kind of set the dial somewhere in between
the thing.
400 and the 6.
And the problem is because film you can, it's better to overexpose than underexpose in most cases. You can shoot 400 anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like a third of a stop, isn't it? So
fair enough, if you say so.
All right, so let's move on to reviews. We have a company which is called Backscatter, who specializes in selling underwater equipment. So they reviewed Nikon Z9 as an underwater camera.
Which is unusual, but it's nice to finally see an underwater camera review for the Z9.
We definitely didn't have such a review before.
They said, you may notice a theme in this review comparing the Z9 versus the 850 and the Z7 series. Those cameras are fantastic benchmarks to be compared against, with the Nikon D850 being the house favorite of the Backscatter staff for still photos since it came out. We still recommend the D850 to customers every day, even though the camera is over 4 years old. Now, incoming from a DSLR like the D850, the Z9 represents the most familiar user experience transition from DSLR to mirrorless for a Nikon shooter, and probably any brand DSLR to mirrorless transition. It's easiest to think of the differences between the Z9 and the 850 as the Z9 has faster shooting, a bigger battery, slightly better AF for underwater, much improved video spec versus the 4K 30p of the D850, and the biggest difference of all, an electronic versus optical viewfinder. All that being said, the biggest and pretty much only beef with the Z9 is the same lackluster ambient light custom white balance at depths approaching 50 feet, and no meter in video mode that has plagued Nikon for years. Improvements in this area are long overdue, and frankly the only reason I could not recommend it to a top pro level underwater video shooter.
Okay, so the gist of it is, if you got a D850 and you're a still shooter, you should really stick to your D850 because you probably already have underwater housing for it, so you don't need to spend extra. Now, if you're a videographer, Z9 has clear advantages. And obviously you're going to spend money on that, and plus additional, $3,000 to $4,000 for the underwater rig. But then you get obviously 8K in the mix, or 4K if you want to. Autofocus is going to be better. Overall, you know, it's a good option. And the only thing is, as they say, is the white balance, which apparent to all Nikon cameras for the depth under 40 feet and lower. And again, this is more or less correctable, especially for stills photography, because if you shoot RAW, that's fine. For videography, not that much. However, I guess if you use that Nikon RAW for video, which is still available because the lawsuit hasn't finished yet, you can still adjust those.
Yeah, and the new firmware update for the Z9 does include that waveform for judging exposure. So the lack of meter for video is not so much of an issue if that is your main beef with it.
Very interesting review. I haven't seen that one before. So if you are into underwater stuff, definitely do have a look. There's a lot more information in the review that we've mentioned.
That's right. Now, next up, we have a ZFC camera review by Christopher Frost on his YouTube channel. He does recommend it.
Yeah, he likes it. The only thing he says is there are not many DX lenses around, and he wants Nikon to open their mount to third-party manufacturers, which we talked about to death as well.
We want
hopefully
that.
It's going to happen. And hopefully if Nikon introduces a new DXZ camera, then we'll see more lenses as well, because definitely we don't need to have a separate lineup from full frame, but we definitely need some essentials to have a DX line, like ultra-wide angle and a very versatile zoom lens in that mix as well.
Exactly. Next up, we have Approaching the Scene 200. Why I love the new Nikon 800mm 6.3 PF VRS by Hudson Henry Photography.
So he tested the lens, he shot with it, he loves it. He said, I didn't expect to love this lens because it's not the focal distance that I normally use, but it is fantastic. He goes into details and different applications with it. We had a test of it last Friday as well, which we had the lens with the Z9 for a day, and our impressions are very positive.
They are. We are going to be culling all of those thousands of photographs we took on that shooting day, and we will be putting out a review video as soon as humanly possible.
And if you haven't seen our famous live stream, Take 2, then do definitely check it out.
Yes.
Let's move on to We Can Read and Watch.
Yes, for your We Can Read and Watch segment, we have Nikon Autofocus Explained with Mark Cruz, who is the Senior Manager of Product Digital Camera Interchangeable Lens at Nikon USA.
It's almost 2 hours long, goes in depth through all those focus settings and behavior of autofocus system on Nikon Z cameras. So if you haven't figured out Nikon Z autofocus yet, this is the one to watch.
Brace yourself.
It's a long one, therefore no more videos for you this week.
That's right.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us this week.
That's right. Thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give us a follow, a review, a rating, all that good stuff on the podcast platforms. Very much appreciated.
And if you want to listen the audio version of the podcast in the high definition, or hi-fi as they call it, do definitely check out the podcast platforms like Apple Podcast, Amazon Unlimited, and Spotify as well. We are there at 320 kilobits per second.
Very nice. We're also on the internet. You can find the shop at Nikon at Grace on Instagram.
Yes.
And you?
At Konstantin Kochkin and Becky.
At Rebecca_Donese.
We publish samples of the images taken with the equipment we review. So if you want to have more information about that, definitely do check it out. And also if you want to see what we're up to.
But no singing.
Not this time.
Thanks very much for watching.
Bye.